I love that sound, the rhythm of it. So you know everyone's doing it right.
Mrs. Fisher's is known as the Rockford Chip. It's been around for many years, but my family purchased it in 2008. Growing up in the factory, I began to notice the community that Mrs. Fisher's has created. And as I've gotten older, I've begun to work there on the weekends, which made me want to make this. Why does Rockford love Mrs. Fisher's? How did this community form? And how can one chip be so impactful to a town?
My story with Mrs. Fisher's potato chips.
My grandparents are from the Rockford area, born here in the 1930s. And so, we all grew up in this area with them and our parents and stuff. And Mrs. Fisher's was always present.
When I worked at Burpee Museum as the gift shop manager, every week all the employees would put money together, and then one of the employees would go over to the factory and buy one of the big buckets and then bring them back, and they were just fresh off the line, and it was so yummy. And then also on top of it, it was just it was a really good bonding moment for all of us as well too.
Okay, so I grew up just a couple blocks away from Mrs. Fisher's, and in the summer, my brother and sister and I rode our bikes all the time, and that was one of our spots because for a nickel, you could get a bag of crumbs, and then we would go there, get our crumb bags, and then fold it over our bike handle and ride home with our crumb bag. Also, my grandma was a huge Mrs. Fisher's fan. Like, it was her chip. And she made the best cookies ever in the whole world out of potato chips. Everyone knew them, everyone wanted them, and I wish I could have one of her cookies, but she's no longer with us, but we have that memory for a long time.
In the early 1990s, my grandma moved to Oklahoma, and we would go visit her a couple times a year, and every time she would say, make sure you bring a few bags of Mrs. Fisher's chips. So every time before we packed up the car to drive to Oklahoma, we would go to the store and buy 5 or 6 bags of Mrs. Fisher's chips to bring down to my grandma in Oklahoma. So.
We use their chips for all family functions. I have 2 buckets. I wish I brought them with me. And we fill them up with regular chips and barbecue chips. We use them for Sunday fun days. We use them for birthday parties. We use them for wedding, showers, whatever the family might be doing. And then I also sell Mrs. Fisher's potato chips at Starlight Theater every summer. Come see me in the lower concession stand and you will see the small bag of Mrs. Fisher's potato chips for, I believe, $2 a bag. And I go and pick those up every 2 weeks from Mrs. Fisher's. We sell 2 cases every 2 weeks.
Hearing everyone's stories, honestly, made me more intrigued about the company beyond what I've seen growing up in the factory. What makes them so good? How did Mrs. Fisher's get to where they are now? What motivates them to keep going when there are other companies with more popularity? And to help answer these questions, I decided to interview my uncle.
My name is Chris Spiess. The process of making a bag of Mrs. Fisher's it's a unique one, but it's a fun one. We start off with potatoes from our farms up in Wisconsin. The potato trucks drive down to our shop. We unload them off of the semi. We put them into these giant totes that hold about 12 to 1,500 pounds of potatoes. And then one by one, we take those totes and we dump them into a hopper. And from there, we grade them for size. We clean them, we wash them. Any dirt or debris or the occasional golf ball that's made it from the farm to us gets taken out. And from there, we weigh it out to about 150 pounds of raw potatoes, and we peel those. And we peel them in what's called an abrasion peel, which is a cylindrical drum that spins around, and the potato itself hits the walls and the tops and the bottom of the system, and that's what peels most of the skin off. From that point, it goes into our bucket elevator system that scoops 2 to 3 potatoes at a time, dumps them into a giant slicing wheel, where we slice our potatoes a very unique and secret thickness that I can't disclose. And from that point, these slices are then ejected into the fryer itself, where they sit and they They cook for about 7 minutes. It takes 7 to 10 minutes on average to slice and fry a full potato or a potato chip. And then from there it goes into a salt bath, or depending what seasoning we're making that day, it gets covered in the seasoning that's being called for. And from there our product sits in a giant hopper system for 24 hours to fully cure and set. And then the next business day we package it. It goes into a bag, into a box, onto a pallet, onto the truck. And usually within 1 to 3 days, that raw potato is now a finished bag of Mrs. Fisher's sitting at a shelf at Woodman's or Schnucks or Myers, anywhere in the Rockford area. So Mrs. Fisher's officially started in 1932 with the husband and wife, Eugene and Ethel Fisher. In the roaring 20s, especially towards the late 20s, as the Great Depression was beginning to really creep down, Popular Mechanics, the magazine, had a flyer in there. If you mailed a check for $40, which was a lot of money in that time, they would mail to you a giant slicing wheel and a peeler, and you could make this new trend that was called potato chips. They started doing that. They had a spare cast iron bathtub in their basement, and they put a burner underneath of it and started making potato chips and selling them for a nickel a bag up and down the street. The product started to take off, and Eugene and Ethel's church that they belonged to said, hey, you guys have something that's quite unique. You should look into expanding it. And so they did. And they opened up their own storefront on the corner of 5th Street and 7th Avenue in Rockford, Illinois. From that point in time, one of their sales drivers, Sylvester Hahn, showed deep interest in the business, and they ended up selling the business to Sylvester Hahn. He took it and grew it, made a bigger size bag to accommodate the growing needs of the grocery store industry and the consumers alike that wanted something that could take care of the kids for a couple of days versus a small bag of chips that was to take care of that initial impulse when you got hungry.
While I was checking out the old location, I ran into the pastor at the church next door. And after explaining why I was filming, he wanted to tell me a quick story.
I'm Pastor Mike Thomas, Zion Lutheran Church pastor. Zion Lutheran Church used to have a youth group center here back in the 70s with Steve Stark and a bunch of the other kids. They used to meet in here after Mrs. Fisher had closed down and stopped using the building. So we were grateful. The kids in confirmation back in the 50s and 60s remember getting nickel bags, which were paper bags full of the little chips that were all crumbles, and they would bring them to confirmation, all that grease and stuff. And when I first came here in 2010, these older people were talking about getting nickel bags. In Chicago, a nickel bag has to do with pot. So I was like going, what? Mrs. Fisher's little chips. That's where you got it.
Pastor Thomas knew the owner of the building and introduced me to her. Sue then gave me a tour around the building.
This is some of the original floor. Oh, wow. This is where Mrs. Fisher's probably spilled some oil. And that's the original fixture itself. I just cleaned it up, stripped it. It used to be on the boiler that heated the building in the basement.
The most important part of this interaction was being able to see how the community values these pieces of our history.
Sylvester Hahn decided it was time to sell, and he had two route drivers, Tony and Mario Marsili, that showed great interest in the company, and they ended up purchasing the business from him, in which they moved to a new location, if you know, in Rockford, where Pinnan's Meat is off of Fulton Avenue, directly across the street. That little empty building now was our second facility, where they introduced larger batch fryers to make the chips and some more conveyors and mechanized the system a bit. And then in the late 60s, they ended up selling the business to not one, not two, but three brothers who were equally involved in the operation as route drivers and machine operators at the time. The DeVenti brothers, Pete, Paul, and Chuck, they moved the business down the street 2 more blocks to where our current facility is off of Fulton Avenue. And that's really when things took off. This was the heyday of the 70s and the 80s, where we introduced the brand new frying system that we had that in those days cost $1.2 million for just a giant batch fryer to make 1,500 pounds of potato chips in an hour. And that continued success up until my boss, Roma, purchased the business with her now late husband in 2007.
My husband and I are the 5th owner, and it's always been someone within the company that has bought the company.
And the mindset behind it is from sweeping crumbs off of the floor to signing paychecks for your employees. You should know exactly what needs to be done, start to finish. You're the last person and the first person to walk in. And that's a tradition that we've continued to do for 93 years in the city. And that's what's led us to be in business so successfully. And the reason why we're one of the last potato chip manufacturers in the Midwest that is still this small mom and pop atmosphere.
I have to tell you this so you can think about it, okay? Last year, your uncle gave me a couple of baskets for the raffle there at Rascals for the Dutch Roll fundraiser. And it's out there, and awesome. Here's a Vietnam vet. We had it done in the 80s. He's sitting there staring at it. He goes, "Mrs. Fisher's." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "We had those over in Vietnam. They were sent over there. Someone sent them. They were eating Mrs. Fisher's over in Vietnam."
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
And it's like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, how do I buy this?" I said, "Well, you have to win it." He goes, "How do I win it?" So we got tickets and he loaded it up. So I think he walked out with it.
Oh, that's cool.
So that was just unbelievable.
Mrs. Fisher's chips are known as the Rockford Chip, and you might see why. They're loved by everyone, and not just because of the crunch, but because this company has stayed committed to Rockford and continues to be a part of a loving community of people who all share one love for one thing: potato chips.